Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our weekly program where we're broadcasting live from Northern California, from Divine Light Spiritist Group and the Beseja Spiritual Healing Center to you at the privacy of your home. Our study is focused on the Spirit's teachings in the Gospel according to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. When we look at the book, at the Gospel according to Spiritism, we see that every chapter starts with some quotes from the Gospel, Mark, Luke, Matthew, whoever the apostle is. Then it is followed by Allan Kardec's explanations and interpretations. And then after that, Allan Kardec presents to us the Spirit's teachings. And the Spirit's teachings are further interpretations of each chapter, the subject matter, by different spirits on high. And today we're finding ourselves still in chapter 13 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is entitled, Do Not Let Your Left Hand Know. Do not let the left hand know what your right hand is doing. Last week we talked about beneficence at length. And today, still part of chapter 13, the Spirit's teachings, we will take a closer look at the summary of beneficence. So we have a good tie over from last week. And then we're going to look at compassion, the comment on orphans, the comments on benefits repaid with ingratitude. What happens if we are doing the good and we're being treated with ingratitude? And lastly, the exclusivity of beneficence. So let us first share the screen. And let us say hello to our friends. Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, dear friend. So, and everyone else who is joining and who has joined already on the various platforms. We're air streaming to 5 different platforms. So we're sure there's other friends that we can't see from here. So let us share the screen. And here we go. Thank you for your patience, dear friends. So today we will be looking at items 17 through 20 in chapter 13. And here is the summary of beneficence, which is what we looked at length and in depth last week. These are the Spirit's teachings. So Jean, who is a spirit, said, whatever God may have given you, you owe part of it to those who lack what is necessary. So whatever gifts we've received in this incarnation, we owe to share it with those who lack it. So this is important for us to note and remember. Then we learned from St. Vincent de Paul that the key to heaven is to be good and charitable, to be goodwill, benevolent, right? To doing the good always, doing the good, visualizing the good, feeling the good, speaking the good, thinking the good, molding the good with all the resources we have at hand. It's a full-time job. There's no space for anything else. Whatever duty we are fulfilling, we're doing the good at the same time. And then the Spirit Caritas told us that charity is almsgiving. When we give alms, we are asked to create privations for our own selves. So it's not just, anything we don't want anymore and we give to the homeless and now we're so proud and we tell it to everyone. We tell everyone about it. No, it's supposed to be, when we give alms, it's supposed to be discreet. So to never put anyone down. And what we're giving is ideally something we don't want to spare, something that creates a privation. And then there's the charity, the more moral charity, which expresses itself through indulgence, forgiveness of weaknesses, The charity, the moral charity that preserves the self-esteem of others, and the charity that gently treats those whose beliefs are different from us. That is something that has become more important these days. And from St. Vincent de Paul, again, we learn that the key to heaven is to be good and charitable. We had to repeat that. It's so important. The key to heaven is to be good and charitable. So now, dear friends, let us move on. Instead of now going to item, I think it's 17, which would be the logical step, yes, entitled Compassion, we are pulling forward item 20 because it so exclusively deals with beneficence. We just talked about the summary of beneficence from last week, so we felt it to be appropriate to talk first about the exclusive beneficence. And that comes to us from the Spirit, St. Louis, from 1860. And it starts with a question, very interesting and important question for us. Is beneficence rightly understood when practiced exclusively among persons of the same opinion, the same belief, or the same political party? So are we correct if we're only beneficent when we have goodwill at our heart, when we do the good, to those whose beliefs and opinions and political party affiliations are the same as ours? Let's see what the answer is. And the answer is, of course, we know already, no. No. It's not, beneficence is not rightly understood if we practice it exclusively. Because it is especially the spirit of sectarianism and political parties that must be abolished. For all humans are brothers and sisters. So, dear friends, we're not making a distinction between red or blue, between vaccinated or not vaccinated, between someone is believing there is a God and someone believes there is no God, for someone who is Catholic versus Jewish, for those who believe that the earth is flat and others round. And the examples are plenty. We could spend all evening just giving examples. No, beneficence is not rightly understood when practiced exclusively, because sectarianism and political parties must be abolished. So this is very clear, isn't it, friends? So it's something to keep in mind. True Christians see only brothers and sisters in their fellow beings, and before helping those who are in need, they do not ask them about what their beliefs or opinions might be. So we help no matter what. We don't ask, are you vaccinated? And if you're not vaccinated, I'm not going to help you. No, that's not aligned with God's will. Would Christians be obeying Jesus Christ's precept that says to love even one's enemies if they send unfortunate individuals away because they profess a different belief system? So important, right, friends? And this is actually at times suggested to us these days, even within the medical profession. So let us take note. Therefore, help them without asking them to give an account of their conscience. For if they are an enemy of religion, it will be a way to lead them to love it. And this is just one example. Religion is just a placeholder for many different opinions, beliefs, and affiliations. Sending them away would cause them to hate it. Thank you so much, St. Louis. It's so clear that exclusive beneficence is not the correct way to practice beneficence. All right, let us move on. And now we're jumping back to item 17, compassion. This is by the Spirit Michel from 1862. Compassion is the virtue that brings you closer to the angels. Isn't that beautiful? Compassion is the virtue that brings us closer to the angels. It is the sister of charity. So they're on equal footings, even though we always learn that charity is the virtue par excellence, which means it is the virtue of all virtues, encompassing all other virtues. But here, Michael is saying that compassion is the sister of charity, which leads you to God. Allow your hearts to be moved with compassion before the miseries and sufferings of your fellow beings. Your tears are a balm which you pour out on their wounds, and when out of kind sympathy you manage to restore their hope and resignation. That delight you will feel. Such delight will, of course, contain a certain bitterness. Why? Because it is born alongside misfortune. So when we observe misfortune and we extend ourselves through compassion, we draw closer to God. Yet that feeling of compassion has a little bit of a bitter drop in it, bitterness, because this feeling of delight to be compassionate is rooted in misery. But it will restore hope and resignation. And that means doing the good. That's part of beneficence. That is part of not letting our left hand know what our right hand is doing. We're discreetly extending ourselves. And what's more, it's our duty. Compassion, deeply felt, is love. It's a form of love. Love is devotion. Devotion is forgetting oneself. And this forgetfulness, this self-denial on behalf of the unfortunates, is virtue par excellence. The kind that the divine Messiah practiced throughout his life and taught in his holy and sublime doctrine. Once this doctrine is returned to its primitive purity, when all peoples have accepted it, it will bring happiness on earth, enabling harmony, peace, and love to finally reign. Dear friends, this is the success. This is the recipe for success. Once again, we're being spoon-fed of how to conduct ourselves successfully, drawing closer to God, not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit who we're helping and the benefit of the greater whole, and the benefits in the spirit world, because we're always operating in both realms. So compassion equals love, and love equals devotion. When we love, we are devoted to the one who we love. Devotion, when we practice true devotion, we're forgetting of ourselves. We're focused, we're other focused. We're wanting to give and show up for someone else. And at that moment, the self steps back in its importance. The forgetting of oneself is the virtue par excellence. It is charity. It's a form of charity. It's beneficence. It's exactly what Jesus modeled to us and practiced his whole entire life. And once we get there and we truly, truly practice what Jesus taught us and modeled to us, that's when the earth will be transformed into a place of harmony, peace, and love. And we can't wait for it. It's us. We need to do it. It's coming from us most and foremost. The most appropriate sentiment for enabling you to progress by subduing your selfishness and pride, the one that predisposes your soul to humility, Beneficence and love for your neighbors is what? Can we guess that? The most appropriate sentiment for us to progress and subdue ourselves, our selfishness and pride. The one that predisposes our souls to humility and beneficence and love is what? It's compassion, dear friends. It's compassion. Compassion does it all. We're opening our hearts to our brothers and sisters, and we do it without being exclusive. We just learned that too. Never smother this heavenly emotion in your heart. So now we're invited to never suppress compassion in our hearts. Never. Do not do like those hardened, selfish people who avoid the afflicted because the sight of their misery would upset them for a few moments of their carefree lives. Peace of mind bought at the price of culpable indifference. Peace of mind bought at the inculpable indifference is the price of the culpable indifference, is the peace of mind of what? Of the Dead Sea, he says, which hides fetid slime and decay in its depth. It is so easy to be indifferent. We are bombarded with bad news. If we tune in, it's nonstop. It's online. It's in our lives when we leave our homes. It is nonstop. We see suffering. We receive bad news. And so it's easy to be indifferent. We just keep scrolling. Okay, so many die here. Oh yeah, there is famine here. Oh yeah, there's this happening there. Just keep scrolling, keep going, keep going. No compassion. And we understand it because it's so much. It's almost crazy making that we feel we need to numb ourselves. We can't feel it all. But here we're invited to recommit to compassion, to never squelch that feeling in us. Without a doubt, on contact with another's misfortune, the soul rebounds upon itself and experiences a natural, profound ache that makes its entire being vibrate and affects it so painfully. And it is so true. If we just hear one piece of bad news or see one terrible thing, and we pause and feel, it's exhausting. It's very painful. It literally stops us in our tracks. But great will be the compensation when you manage to restore courage and hope to an unfortunate brother or sister who is moved by the contact of a friendly hand. And this friendly hand does not have to be our physical hands. It can be through our eyes, a smile, pat on the shoulder, but it can also be completely removed when we find bad news and we feel compassionate to misery we find online. It can be through a prayer, sending good thoughts, sending love, sending harmony, asking the good spirits to come to the rescue. Compassion is the melancholic but celestial precursor of charity, whose benefits she prepares and ennobles. Dear friends, compassion is absolutely vital. It's the virtue par excellence. It helps us to practice self-denial on behalf of unfortunates. It is something that's accepted by all peoples, and it will bring happiness to the earth, leading to the reign of harmony, peace, and love. Compassion is the precursor of charity, or the sister of charity. And compassion is the sister of charity. Compassion and charity are very much related. Compassion is a form of charity. Now let us look at orphans. Of course, orphans is a wonderful subject and a wonderful example of where and how we can extend ourselves. It's in item 18, and it's written by a familiar spirit in 1860. And the familiar spirit says, "My brothers and sisters, love all orphans. Let us love all orphans. If you only knew how sad it is to be abandoned, especially in infancy. God allows there to be orphans in order, let's listen why. Why does God allow there to be orphans? God allows there to be orphans to engage us, to serve as their parents. And maybe in some past incarnation, we were a doctor of abortions, or we aborted children ourselves, or other reasons where we mistreated children. And today, we are here to help orphans to act as their parents. Just one possibility. Those who reach out to an abandoned child are agreeable to God. Yes, we can imagine that. For they understand and practice His law. Moreover, consider that many times the child you help today may have been dear to you in another incarnation. Because the perspective is always bigger than we think. We're rather myopic in our human earthly experience, and we tend to be blind to previous incarnations. But let us remember the opportunity, the possibility that the orphan, the child we are helping, may have been very dear to us in a previous existence. And if he or she could remember you, it would no longer be charity, but what? Would be an obligation. So not every time we think we're helping an orphan, it is charitable. But if we have a loving connection to this spirit, it is actually our obligation, it's our duty to take care of them. It's interesting, isn't it? Thus, my friends, every sufferer is your brother or your sister and has a right to your charity. Say that again. Every sufferer is our brother or our sister. And the sufferer has the right to our charity, the right to our charity. But not the charity that wounds the heart or the arms that burn the hand in which they are deposited, for your arms are frequently quite bitter. So let us work on that, dear friends. So give delicately. Add to your beneficent act the most precious of all acts, a good word, a pat, a friendly smile. A good word, a pat, and a friendly smile are examples for us to give delicately, to let the hand, to not let our left hand know what our right hand is doing, to be discreet and delicate, to be uplifting and truly charitable. Add to your beneficent act the most precious of all. We said it. Avoid the patronizing tone that twists the knife in a heart that is bleeding. And remember that in doing good, you're working for yourself and your loved ones. Because most likely, we have to undo some wrong that we've committed in the past. So let us not just be illusionary and think we're doing it for them, but we're also doing it for us. And we're invited to help every sufferer. Why? Because every sufferer is our brother and sister. Why? Because we're all children under one God. And in taking care of orphan children is our obligation, because these spirits may have been very dear to us in a previous incarnation. And we do it delicately by saying a good word, giving a pat on the shoulders, and offering a friendly smile. All right, dear friends. Now let us move on to item 19, which will be our last. This is entitled Benefits Repaid with Ingratitude. And that's item 19. It's by a protector guide in 1862. So this is interesting as our last item of chapter 13. Next week, we're moving on to chapter 14, which is honor your father and mother. Because often we want to do the good. We are charitable. We're practicing beneficence. We do it even delicately. We don't advertise it. We're so busy. We see it as our duty and our obligation. And we feel it's all wonderful. But there's one thing we want, and that is gratitude. We want to thank you. We want appreciation. It's so hard to keep giving and not being recognized, right, friends? We all have that. And here we're hearing a little bit more about it. The importance of giving benefits without receiving gratitude. Item 19 starts with a question. And the question is as follows. What should be thought of persons whose beneficence has been repaid with ingratitude, and who therefore no longer practice the good out of fear of meeting more ungrateful people? So, what are we thinking of those people who stop giving because they haven't received any gratitude? What should we think of them? Are they doing the right thing? Well, I don't want to pamper that person. I don't want to spoil them. What's the right conduct? Let us see. There's always a higher spirit to the rescue for us, helping us out. So this is what our protector guide says. These persons are much more selfish than charitable. So those people who stop giving because they're not receiving any gratitude, are much more selfish than charitable. Since practicing the good only to receive signs of recognition is not to practice it disinterestedly. And disinterested beneficence is the only kind that is agreeable to God. So now we're being fine-tuned. Okay, we got that beneficence is super important. It's doing the good always, thinking the good, feeling the good, and doing the good always. We also already learned that to be to be exclusive in our practice of beneficence is not correct either, because we're all brothers under one God, brothers and sisters under one God. And we learned that sectarianism and political parties need to be abolished. So it doesn't matter what others believe. Well, everyone is a brother or sister of us, deserving of our beneficence. And now we're being told that disinterested beneficence is the only kind of beneficence that is agreeable to God. So every time, we think, oh, we got it, now we can go to work, right? There's yet another, the bar is being raised a little bit higher. It's getting just a little bit more challenging. So, dear friends, the threefold beneficence, right, for everyone, totally non-exclusive, inclusive, and disinterested, delicate. Those who seek recompense on the earth for the good they do will not receive recompense in heaven, because then we've received all of our recompense already. But the true recompense is the one from God, not from our fellow brothers and sisters. However, God will take into account those who do not seek recompense on the earth. So this is the only kind that's agreeable to God, when we practice the good, beneficence, and we are not expecting anything in return. Maybe sometimes we're being pushed away, kicked in the butt. and we keep giving. Interesting, right, friends? You must always help the weak, even though you know beforehand that the recipients of the good you do will not be grateful. You can be certain that if those to whom you render a service forget about the benefit, God will take it more into account than if you had been recompensed by their gratitude. So if they forget and if they don't show that they even received it, they don't show to us that they appreciate it, none of that matters because we are practicing disinterested beneficence. We work for God and not for our brothers and sisters primarily. We work for God. And more, okay. God sometimes allows you to be repaid with ingratitude in order to test your perseverance in practicing the good. So that's interesting too, right? So it could even be a test. Maybe we've reached a point in our evolution where that's a lesson we need to master. So God gives us opportunity to be confronted with lots of needy people, and none of them appreciate us or what we're doing in the slightest. On the contrary, now we know we are asked to keep going because disinterested beneficence is the only kind that is agreeable to God. And we're working for God. And moreover, how do you know if the momentarily forgotten act of beneficence might not produce good fruit later on? Because the other thing is, when we do the good, we do anything for somebody else, from our thoughts on, we're planting seeds. We're like gardeners. We carry around this huge bag of seeds throughout our lives, and we throw them out at other people. We're just sowing seeds. That's our duty. But to revisit and see, is it growing? Is it happening? To tug on the little shoot, and then to expect gratitude that there's something growing in our neighbor's garden, that's not part of our work. But we are planting seeds, and we never know. They may bear fruit. Unfortunately, you always see only the present. You work for yourselves and not with others in mind. Most assuredly, acts of beneficence end up softening the hardest hearts. That's the thing. Even if the others can't show that their hearts are starting to soften, we'll keep giving. It's like drip irrigation, and those seeds will eventually bear fruit, germinate, so to speak. Drip irrigation, the ground will eventually get softer, even though at first it seems to do nothing, and there's no recognition for it. They may be unappreciated in this world, but once the recipient's spirit is rid of its corporeal envelope, it will remember, and that remembrance will be its punishment. So here we're giving, giving, giving. The opposite side does not recognize it. Now they discarnate. And they look back and they see, oh my gosh, look at that. It actually helped me. And I did not express any gratitude. And that is law of cause and effect. The spirit calls it punishment, but that's the effect, painful effect of us not recognizing the other. Now, there is another side to it, and that's us. How often do we receive help from others and we don't show any gratitude? Now, that's very different because we know better, don't we, friends? Because if we don't, yes, the other is working for God, the other gets repaid by God eventually, but we will be suffering when we look back, when we realize that we have been ungrateful. So there's two sides. Most assuredly, acts of beneficence end up softening the hardest heart. They may be unappreciated in the world, but once the recipient's spirit is rid of its corporeal envelope, it will remember, and that remembrance will be its punishment. then it will regret its ingratitude and will want to repair its wrong and pay its debt in another existence. This is how ties get formed. And then this new existence, they're often accepting a life of dedication towards its benefactors from a previous incarnation. So sometimes we encounter spirits that just do the good for us, and they feel like on a track, they got to do it. That's when they're making up. It's one possibility, making up for missed opportunities in a previous incarnation. They didn't fulfill their duty. Thus, without suspecting it, you will have contributed to that spirit's moral advancement, and you will recognize later the truth of the maxim: a benefit is never lost. A benefit is never lost. Moreover, you will have worked for yourselves because you will have the merit of having done the good disinterestedly and without being discouraged by disillusionment. Yep, we are not looking for gratitude, recognition. We don't see it as a disillusionment, and we are sowers and givers disinterestedly. We are benevolent and beneficent without wanting anything in return. But when we receive, we will be grateful and appreciative. Ah, my friends, if you knew all the ties that in your present life bind you to previous existences, if you could grasp the multitude of relationships that connect people to one another for their mutual progress, you would admire even more the wisdom and goodness of the Creator, who allows you to live again and again to reach Him in the end. Friends, that marks the end of item 19. Let us remember the picture is always bigger than what we assume and see. Let us have faith in God, and let us listen and follow Jesus' guidance, because Jesus knew all of this and modeled it to us to the T. So next week, so God willing, we will continue with chapter 14. Excuse me, friends. And that will be honor your father and your mother. Another very interesting and deep study. So thank you for joining. Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining, dear friend. Thank you for joining. Much love and many blessings. And we'll see you, so God willing, next week, same time, same place. God bless you, friends.